Good morning, everybody. Welcome to London Station. We're here with the Discovery Corps today, taking a look at a game called M-Space. M-Space is a game I have actually talked about a handful of times. I think I mentioned it on my very first ever stream. I know I mentioned it in my Lambda Act stream, which was when we were sort of theorizing what a sci-fi game would look like that represented London Station. And here we are taking a full look at it today. I had access to the PDF of this, and I didn't realize that the one I had was outdated. And then a certain someone, gifted me the proper full version for my birthday. So we're going to take a look at that today. It's M-Space 1.2, I suppose, in the release information. But a little bit of history about M-Space and I guess its lineage. There's a series of games going all the way, back to the 70s, really, I believe, called BRP, stands for Basic Role Playing, and a lot of those games were skill-based games. They used a lot of D100 roll under for the resolution, and that was like really the very core chassis of it. Then there were contested rolls and just a little bit of mechanical weight put on a few things, but not a ton to it. It's a very versatile baseline of a system. And BRP is actually the foundation for other juggernaut games like Call of Cthulhu. Has its roots there. Pendragon has been big lately, also coming out of Chaosium. Let's see, what else? RuneQuest, of course. So RuneQuest utilized a lot of that system. RuneQuest has gone through many versions. So first edition, second edition, and then I think they lost the rights, and then it went to a different publisher, and then that publisher had a different idea on how to do things, and then the rights came back, and then the publisher who had it in the interim decided to make a version that was stripped down and didn't have the setting attached to it. So that's where you get Mythras from. Mythras is a technically 6th edition of RuneQuest. It just doesn't have any of the Glorantha setting, cult stuff like that. So then RuneQuest Adventures in Glorantha, I believe, is the 7th edition. But anyway, so Mythras branches off from there, and then they released a stripped down version of their own rules called Mythras Imperative, which was designed to be hacked into other settings and genres. And then we arrive at M-Space. M-Space is based off of Mythras Imperative. So it is purports to be a more stripped down version, but it is a sci-fi game. It is. Let me mute a few things here on my side. It is it's a sci-fi game. It's skill-based. It's D100 roll under, and I came to it. I was actually actively searching for a game that I thought would be good for the kind of sci-fi that I want to play and tell. And so what I found was, a lot of sci-fi games were going in the narrative direction. Some were going in this really crunchy direction, like, your Traveler, and admittedly full admit that I haven't looked into any Traveler whatsoever. So it could be that Traveler does what I want it to do, but I think I've looked at it and I had some problem with it. And so where that left me was one day I was just wondering, I wonder if there was a BRP system that ever really tackled sci-fi. And the reason that I was looking at that is that the morning, Simon, the stories that I want to tell in science fiction, and I've shared this before, they have this kind of literary sci-fi quality to them. Like I grew up on like reading like the Isaac Asimovs and the Arthur C. Clarkes, and then I discovered Jack McDevitt, which is not modern sci-fi. It was once called by a reviewer cozy sci-fi, and I kind of liked that. Just this sense of like you kind of know everything's going to be all right. There's some danger, but you're kind of like, they're going to figure out the mystery. They're going to solve the thing. They're going to figure out why this alien signal is broadcasting from this place, even though it doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of like xenoarchaeology and xenobiology to it, and trying to decode messages. And I really like that sort of like explorational discovery-based sci-fi. And I had that notion. I thought, if there was a robust skill system that does sci-fi, that is probably what I've been looking for all along, and in a way it is. And so I think I just Googled it like last year sometime. I was like, was there ever a BRP game that that did sci-fi? And lo and behold, it came up with MSpace. And so I took a look at it, and I have already actually started hacking it. So calling this today a first contact is a little bit of a misnomer, but it's okay because I'm not super rigid about how I use that language anyway. We're going to dive into it here in just a second. I did queue up the sci-fi playlist, so we'll get to listen to these tunes from back in the Astro Prisma days. And we will just take it from there. So let's get on over to this side. Make sure I have my Adobe Capture turned on and bring it up. There you go. So this book was laid out in a square format. It's actually a book I would love to have in print. But no real rush or urgency for that. I've got plenty of things in print that I still need to sit down and cozy up with and read, like all of my Legend of the Mist books I need to read cover to cover again. But this is MSpace. It does have a very sort of why is my Adobe frame all weird? Looks like it got moved around. It has this very sort of, I don't know if you want to call it utilitarian, but it's very kind of stark. Let's do page width like that. So this art on the cover here is already very much just like, here's a normal person walking down this riverfront boardwalk, whatever you want to call it, in the rain, in the weather, and yet there's these very sci-fi like towers and weird ships with like landing docks and everything like that, and even the architectural like structure of this arch that sweeps way out over here. There's no supports over here, so I'm not saying this isn't feasible, because we can do crazy stuff even modern times, but it just kind of grounds you in the sense that like you have these very basic normal bridges with pylons and stuff going into the frozen river. Like this really makes me think of Chicago, but I don't know if it's meant to be Earth, Chicago, anything. It's a very interesting piece to communicate a sci-fi game, and I like that because, again, a lot of these sci-fi stories that I'm interested in are about like people. The stories start with people on normal worlds, and they're living normal lives, and they're going to restaurants, and they're watching TV shows, and they're they have like an elevated science fiction style quality of life to things. Like they fly around on skimmers, so everybody, instead of having cars, they have these things, and they don't even really necessarily own them privately. Like that's kind of a luxury. Otherwise, it's just basically like super Uber in space, and this was before Uber was even a thing that I was reading these stories. and they just make their way through the world, but then like something will happen. Oh, we discovered a new signal from the Alpha Centauri system, and we don't know what it is, and we need to send out a team of people who understand this kind of thing to try and figure it out. And a lot of those stories, the sort of background noise threat is always that funding is going to be cut. Like humanity's like, we've explored, we've gone out there, we've looked for stuff, we haven't really found anything that's actually meaningfully contributed to life. And then the other side of things is like, what are we if we're not explorers? What are we if we just stay on our home planets and we just continue on? Like what other innovation is there left? But I will say that those stories also tend to have characters who are artists and so on and so forth, who are still, pushing art into its next phases. But even the artists are out there sometimes getting on the ships and saying like, I want to go out and explore because I want to find new inspiration. So those are the kinds of stories that I enjoy most in sci-fi. There can be some intrigue and some, politics and everything to go along with it. But by and large, they're kind of very normal, I guess is the way to put it. It's kind of like, what would life actually be like in, I think one of the series is like 2,000 years out, one of them's 10,000 years out. So again, these are my Jack McDevitt books that I adore and talk about all the time. So let's take a look at this. I haven't actually done a deep dive into this, because when I read it for myself, I don't read it as closely as I do when I read it with you guys. Role-playing in the far future, explore the stars with M-Space, find uncharted planets at the edge of an event horizon, uncover alien technology long forgotten, or fight classic sci-fi villains like corrupt empires and vicious corporations. So, I like all of that. I like all of it. M-Space includes unique personal characters driven by strong passions, so there's a passion system, modular starship design and creative fast-paced combat, and rules to create believable aliens, their worlds, and cultures. I didn't even get to this part of the book, ever, so that's going to be very much first contact for me. M-Space is a role-playing game based on Mythras. You need only this book to play. There you have it. And Frostbite Books is the imprint that is owned by Clarence Redd, who is the author, right there. So, let's get into it. We're going to have, let's see, M-Space 1.2, written and editing. Yes. I think it does do hit locations, if I remember correctly, but it also presents along with it an abbreviated combat mode, which I would be using. I don't want to do hit locations personally, but we'll find out. I think it does. Additional material, cover art, interior art, assets, and special thanks. Yeah, so this product references the Mythras imperative rules available from the design mechanism at and it is free. Mythras imperative is free if you ever want to look at that abbreviated version of Mythras. There's a lot of little things that I enjoy about this, and one of them is these page numbers here. Like, they could just say 6, 8, 32, 42, but they did the, filled out the digits. It feels a little more sci-fi, 006. Introduction characters, game system, extended conflicts. This extended conflicts is kind of like skill challenges, or you could call it like an application of clocks kind of a thing. We have combat, simplified combat. So combat is, how many pages is this? 20 pages. Simplified combat is 3. From the backseat of the car, welcome in. Back from Gen Con. Hope you had an awesome time. I can't wait to hear all your stories, or any of your stories. Or maybe there are no good stories. I know you've been keeping everybody updated on Paizo stuff, so. Exciting. Spot rules. I don't know what that even means. I'm sure I read it before, but I don't remember. And then we got starships. Starships get a whole, 40 pages, so that's great. And then alien creation, world building. Circles. Circles are like fronts or factions or anything like that. And I kind of liked how this game did it as well. Psionics, I'm not huge on psionics in sci-fi. To me, it should be a plot thing. It shouldn't be a PC thing. It should be like River in the Serenity world, right? I can't believe I'm literally talking to an audience where a third of the audience doesn't even know what I just said. Unbelievable. Vehicle design. I wonder for layout purposes why this didn't come after Starship design, but that's okay. Technology, life forms, and appendix. So, again, it's a D100 system. It's very skill-based. It's going to probably read as very dry because what it's trying to do is give you a framework within which you can simulate, but it's not simulationist either because D100 roll under systems don't take into account the difficulty, generally they can, of the thing. The prime resolution mechanic is about how good are you at the thing. And if you're really good at the thing, then you're probably going to succeed. There are modifiers to modify it all around it, and we'll get to that, but it's basically just a really, really strong, resilient framework upon which you can tell stories on top of. I'm going to get so hyped about this game, I know, as I read through it today, and then I'm going to want to run it, and I don't have the headspace for it. Tragedy. Super tragedy. And then work called, and they're like, hey, do you want to come in for 4 hours tonight? And I'm like, maybe not. Introduction. M-Space is a D100-based rules system for science fiction role-playing. Everything needed to play sci-fi games is included here. The book is a complete game in itself. With this book, a pencil, and some paper, you are ready to tell amazing stories together with a few friends. You will be able to create imaginary universes and play characters from a variety of cultures and careers. They can pilot starships, meet strange alien life forms, and visit beautiful or terrifying worlds. The game engine used for all this is Mythos Imperative, created by the Design Mechanism. If you are familiar with any closely related D100 game like RuneQuest, Call of Cthulhu, or OpenQuest. I've never heard of OpenQuest. Any of you guys ever heard of OpenQuest? You will probably feel right at home. They have a common heritage and share a lot of basic concepts and rules. M-Space is mostly intended for heroic and mythic sci-fi games. Interesting. But can be used for many other styles too, with a few tweaks. You can emulate everything from contemporary, near-realistic settings to 1940s pulp-inspired heroes. I talked about this in probably my Lambda X stream, about how the different aesthetics and genres, subgenres of sci-fi have really largely emerged from what a given generation thinks the future is going to look like. So ray punk is a aesthetic, and this was an art discussion. Ray punk is an aesthetic that came out of like the 50s, 60s, which is when you had like your Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. No, Flash Gordon was 70s. Where you had like the ray guns with like the kind of like the rings around the edge of the gun, you know, and they'd be like pew pew, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, so basically you got into I think it was the 80s, which was when this concrete brutalism came into effect. So it's not a reflection of the decade that made it, it's a reflection of what the decade that made it thought the future would look like. And so if there were periods of like hopefulness and less hopefulness in society, that affects what we think the future is going to look like, and that affects what sci-fi from those decades looks like, which I think is such a cool, fascinating concept. Because if you look, excuse me, at the times in which like cyberpunk, like dystopian cyberpunk corporations taking control, everything like that, you look at when apocalyptic sci-fi comes in and fades away and then comes back. And right now I think it was saying that the sci-fi of now is sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian because of world events. I was reading this article about art styles and I was like, oh gosh, that's rough. But I find it very interesting. This book is a modular toolkit for sci-fi. Use whichever parts you need and leave the rest. The game system will not break down because of this. Okay. I think that he really means it because, again, there are some game systems that are so simple at their core that everything else on top of them is fluff. Another good example, Legend in the Mist has an incredible amount of depth and complication and optional rules and all sorts of crazy things. But at its core, put your themes and your tags down, roll 2d6 and add power for what you think is helping you, and take power away from what you think is hindering you. Forget all about limits and power spend and everything to do with that, and just use a basic PBTA resolution, 6-, 7 to 9, 10+, and you've got a solid game. Legend of the Mist is what you get when you build on top of that and add a bunch more optional complexity. So in that same way here, our core resolution system is going to be, you have a list of skills, you're going to assign numbers to how good at a thing you are, and then you're going to roll and see if you succeed or not, and then you're going to move on, and that's it. That's the super base. I don't know why I can't clear this out of my throat. I'm not sick or anything. Remember when I started this channel and I was sick for 2 months straight? That was great. I've also taken great care to write the rules to help you create your own universe. No ready-made setting is holding back your creativity, just like role-playing games were meant to be when invented in the 70s. Legend of the Mist is a homebrewer's dream if you like narrative systems. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the Mist system at its core, I look at the Mist engine and I think, okay, there are different... Okay, hold on. Let's come over here. There are different types of sci-fi that I want. There are. I want what we're looking at today. I want a very grounded, sort of hard sci-fi, sort of realistic. What I really want to do is I want to take the Rune, I forget what they're called, the Rune resolution system from Runeway, which was that like found family Studio Ghibli mixed with Disney's Onward story about road trips and like people finding themselves. I want to take the resolution system for that and plug that into like how you unlock scientific discoveries in a game like this. I want to mash those together and make them have a baby. But I also want to tell, occasionally, narrative sci-fi stories. And I think Offworlders is great for that. Offworld is a really basic PBTA. It's basically 2d6 plus stat and a couple of abilities, maybe a little bit of gear. And you just kind of blast through. So that's more of like what I would consider like an operatic, like high action narrative kind of opportunity. And I want that too. When I read through the Mist engine, and I look at it in its current incarnation without the moves that City of Mist used to have, I think, ooh, Legend in the Stars. Let's go. Make me that book, please. So I've told all the people at Son of Oak that I know about those desires. In fact, I told them in a live stream, and they pulled it out, and they're like, oh, it's Legend in the Stars. Oh. But I also think, Legend of the Capes, or I guess you want Mist in there rather than Legend, but like Capes in the Mist, right? A superhero game that uses... And they have Queers, which is a little less known game that Son of Oak made. It's Queerz, I think with an exclamation point. It's actually based off of an established IP in Japan. Dicey's looking at it in our server right now, doing a read through, which has some of those superhero elements, but obviously it's very niche to its specific themes and goals and everything like that. But, yes, I agree. Wait till you hear about how it was literally raining inside in a bunch of hotels in the convention center. I saw a GIF of or a video, I guess, on Blue Sky of the rain just pouring down, and it's so funny because the rain is pouring down in like a sheet, right? Like there's like this one breach in the roof, and the water's pouring down, and then in the middle of this line of water that's coming down was like a solitary, large trash bin, and I'm like, you know what? Catch what you can, I guess. That was very funny. Yeah, I heard it was tornado warning and everything like that. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope Logan's okay. Okay. Now this line here, just like role-playings were meant to be when invented in the 70s. I'm not a RPG historian because there's nothing there for me. Like, I'm not interested in what the guys who came up with it thought. I've heard that, they were not, very broadly, all the guys in the 70s were very much guys in the 70s, right? So you get what you get. You get what makes sense to be there. Like when they come out with these like history of D&D books, and it's like, oh, this is so fascinating, and Arneson and Gygax and I don't know who else, Greg Stafford and all these, and I'm just kind of like, I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care, because you can look back and say, oh, here's the lineage of how things got carried forward and so on and so forth, and that can be interesting in its own sort of way, as like an academic study. But like, what does it actually do for me now? Doesn't do anything. So So when they say just like role-playings were meant to be when invented in the 70s, it kind of reads like this kind of poking, like, inflammatory statement. Like, this is how they were meant to be. But it doesn't actually mean that, because it immediately undercuts itself. It's like, it's just like how they were meant to be when they were invented in the 1970s. So it's like, okay, cool. When they were invented in the 70s, they were meant to have no ready-made setting, and you just kind of make your own stuff. And that's fine. It's just kind of worded in a little bit kind of that groggy way. The stories are all yours here, and you can explore them in any way you want. You can create unique alien species, complex cultures and worlds, let a planet orbit a binary star and put the star on a map, chart ancient courses for traders and explorers, find out who's a friend and who's an enemy, and you have already started to play. I like that. A note on role-playing games. MSpace assumes that the reader is familiar with the concept of how role-playing games work, the differences between the players, the game master or referee, the use of characters, and the use of polyhedral dice. If this is your first role-playing game, I recommend you take a look at, and they give you a link. That's elegant and quick, and they're like, look, you don't find MSpace and go like, what's this? That's never going to happen. like you're gonna be lucky if you even find this in print in a game shop. You know, and I've been to my game shop locally. Huge. I shouldn't say it like that. I've been disappointed by the game shop for the lack of shelf space they even have for role-playing games. And so it's mostly, you know, your D&Ds, your Pathfinders, your Starfinders, your Call of Cthulhu's, I think they had a bit of. And then they have a handful of like little one-off things. So it's not like they don't have anything, but they don't have like any like of the Evil Hat books, any of the Blades in the Dark, the Girl by Moonlight, the Scum and Villainy, like any of these. They don't really have PBTA books. So point being, you're not going to stumble onto M-Space in the wild. You're going to find it because you're actively looking for something or you got recommended it. Here's a quote from Ursula K. Le Guin, who I still have never read any Le Guin. And that is apparently a tragedy, I've heard. I write science fiction, and science fiction isn't about the future. I don't know any more about the future than you do, and very likely less. It can be about the future, I think. But it's a, you know, an evocative statement. I've always said that I think sci-fi is about what it means to be human. A lot of sci-fi asks that question. You know, whether it's sci-fi horror. Horror also asks, what does it mean to be human, in a different way. Sci-fi does it in a way of like, we have these technologies, and then what does that leave for us to do? And you have different views on that. You know, you have the dystopia, or you have the like, oh, it's a Renaissance utopia where now everybody pursues art, that kind of thing, which is, you know, is what it is. Okay, characters. Yeah, see, the version I had did not have this art here. So when I got the actual version, I was like, wow, there's art in the book. Every player in M-Space controls a character. Character is the player's alter ego, and is usually very different physically and mentally to the player. From starship pilots and bounty hunters to journalists and librarians. Okay, so we have our basics here, and these terms trip me up. They do, because they're not the terms I'm used to for these things. Characteristics such as strength or charisma, these would be called stats in many other systems, I think. Oh, chat, I can tell you're not updating. There we go. Okay, sorry, my chat was not updating. Mithras fanbase does 10 Grognak. Is that a specific, or was that a typo for Grognard? I like Grognak, that's fun. Black Lodge Gaming, yeah, I've heard things. Isn't all fiction fundamentally about what it means to be human? Fascinating question. Very good question. Very fascinating question. I'm going to save your question for pondering later, because I feel like if I gave that some thought and some prep, I could probably do an entire stream on that. So let me just credit you real quick for asking it in my Discord. Boom, saved. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you, but that's a beautiful question. Okay. Attributes, things like hit points or movement. See, the words are going to take a little bit to get used to. So characteristics are what I would call stats. Attributes are things that I don't even know that they normally have a name in other systems. They just are. But these are going to be derived from your stats, and then skills, expertise, and fundamental abilities. Most of them are described in terms of numbers, expected. Characters are recorded on a character sheet. Wow. This is kind of cute. It is recommended that you first design your character using scratch paper, and then transfer the information to a character sheet once you have gone through each step of the process. That's cute. That's fun. Because there is quite a bit of like allocating skill points in character creation for this. There are templates and like a skill pyramid in the same way that you see a skill pyramid in like Fate. Entirely differently, however. Like Fate, you have like a 4 and 2 3s and 3 2s and whatever. But it's like that, but times 10. So it's like you have a 50 and 2 40s and 3 30s. So there's an appendix for that if you want to do quick character creation. All right. Character creation steps. Also, look, there is a free introductory scenario, which I didn't realize was free, so I need to go download this later. In fact, I'm going to pull the link up right now so that I can get it later. if that link works. I don't know that this link is working. I don't want to send you all off to get some viruses. That's not it at all. It's probably on drive-thru or something. Anyway, free starter scenario featuring a murder mystery on board a space station, right? So that's not an exploration story, but it's very grounded. Like you're on a space station and there's stuff going wrong. Like, how do these human people deal with it? Or maybe they're not human. I don't know. Number 1, character concept. This is I almost want to take a pause here and talk about this. And I don't really know where I'm going to go with it. I've learned over time that people approach character creation in different systems differently. And people want different things from character creation. So sometimes they want, and I'll quote someone that's in the London Station server that I've had conversations with, that they're very interested in identifying the mechanical play loop of a character. And it's really dismissive to say like, oh, they're just build crafting. And I think build crafting is a specific niche of this, where you are only focused on like putting together the puzzle pieces towards an end goal. This individual that I'm referring to, though, has very much been like, I want to think of an interesting play loop. Then I want to find out how to make that mechanically work. Then I'm going to take the things that make it work and I'm going to backfill them into who the character is. And then that's going to tell me what my concept is. And it is an inverted approach to how I tend to create characters. I tend to do this. Step 1, character concept. Decide on the kind of character to play. Keep it simple for now. More will come. And I come at character creation from a like a very kind of soft and fluffy. Like, what do I want to experience? London. What do I want to be my takeaways from having the experience of playing this character and embodying them in the world? What do I want to learn about myself or my friends or experience? Those are my 3 things that I always refer to. So I do tend to start with character concept. But it's interesting because not everyone does. And I'd be curious to go back through like all of the games that I've looked at and read and see how character creation is recommended. Because what I don't think I've ever seen is an RPG that says, here's character creation method 1, here's character creation method 2. Legend of the Mist does this, actually. It has 3 different ways. It's like, here, take this thing that's basically pre-built, make a couple choices, or it's like, go in deep and choose these theme books and answer all these questions about your character. And then the third one is just like, just make it up. So I have seen systems that have multiple ways, but I haven't seen systems that do like this, and I'll get back to it in a second, where it's step 1 character concept, but then like alternate method, or whichever one you want to call it. You know, decide on a core set of skills that you think would be interesting to play, and then go through the steps almost in an inverted way. I don't think I've ever seen that written, which is fascinating because it means players like that have found their way into a method that works for them, but they found it without having actual textual support for what they're trying to do. And it can lead to people saying, well, you're doing it wrong because the rules say to do it this way. And different people's brains work differently, and they're after different things in games. And it's probably more beneficial and healthy for gaming at large to understand that there are different sorts of players. This standard, classic, whatever you want to call it, approach of coming up with a character concept first is by far and away my preference, and I would potentially feel uncomfortable doing anything differently. In fact, I think I've done it before where I've been like, let me think about a mechanical expression that I want to explore. And then it's fallen flat for me. So I might not have the skills to take a mechanical expression and backfill it into character that other people do. But we can call those skills, and we can respect and appreciate what they bring to gaming as well. So there's a fun rant for you. Characteristics. So this is rolled stats, straight down the line. And then for intelligence and size, you get a free 6, basically. So it's 3d6 for our strength, constitution, dex, power, and charisma. 2d6 plus 6 for intelligence and size. And that's because there are certain mechanical elements where it's just like it doesn't make sense for it to be below a certain number. The math kind of needs it to be a higher number. So, alternatively, distribute 80 points amongst the characteristics, minimum 3 or minimum 8 for int and size, maximum 18. So you can just build. This isn't even point buy. It's just put the points wherever you want. Calculate attributes. So these are derived from the stats you just did. Standard skills. Calculate the base value of standard skills by adding together the appropriate characteristics. So base value. This is important. There's multiple steps of allocating points coming up. It's a little tedious, but you only have to do it once. Culture. Decide on a cultural background. Allocate 100 points among the listed standard skills, the chosen professional skills, and the combat style, if any, for the chosen culture. So okay. Coming back over here. You don't get values given to you by your culture or your profession. What you get is, here's 100 points, and if you're this culture, you can only put them in these things. You can still be a very different character by allocating them differently throughout that. But it's kind of like saying, these are the ones you have access to. You don't have access to the others. Until later. We'll get there. You do get a chance to put some stuff in other things later. But it is an interesting tool to say, okay, well, now if I want to think about homebrewing this or coming up with my own system or like coming up with my own list of skills and then my own cultures to plug into it, if you want to use cultures, whatever you want to use, it's like just select what they're able to put points into, and that's it. That's basically what it is to have these buckets. So, career. Choose a career from those available to the setting and distribute 100 points amongst that career's listed standard skills. Right? So same process, and you can have a culture that has the same standard skills as a career, and therefore you can put a ton of points into things. If you don't have any overlap, then you can be more well-rounded, etc. And then finally, bonus skill points. You get 150 to put pretty much anywhere you want. Not actually anywhere you want. There is a standard and professional skill dichotomy here. So it's kind of like a trained, untrained thing, or a common, uncommon system. You can call it that. And then you determine starting equipment based on culture and career. Okay. Rounding of numbers and results. On some occasions, you will be required to divide numbers, typically the rating in a skill, such as for determining a critical success, which is 1/10 of the skill's value. Hate it. Let's be real, I hate it. But it might be fun if I actually tried it. When a division result creates a fraction, always round up to the nearest whole number. So for instance, 1/10 of 64% is 6.4. This is rounded up to 7. Basically what it means is that 60 means you crit on a 1 through 6. 61 means you crit on a 1 through 7. So when you have spare little one-off points, you want to put them at the next, at the one spot. You don't want to leave something at around 60. Put it at 61 because it gives you another whole percent chance to crit on things. Oh, this is cool. Example concepts: backwater miner, street start smuggler, adventurous scientist, medical doctor on the run, journalist standing up for the poor, security agent betrayed by a former employer, diplomat on a secret mission. There you go. Character concept, good place to start, etc. We get it. Characteristics. So we have 7 stats here. We have the base 6 that show up in D&D and D&D likes, and then we also have size. Size is a very BRP thing. It's debatable to whether or not it belongs in a game like M-Space. And in fact, I think I retained it when I was hacking just because I wanted to come up with a hack that stayed as true to the source material as possible. But I could see a world where you just eliminate it. Size to me seems to make more sense in like a Conan the Barbarian type world. Or even, I know it does certain things in Pendragon about like which horses you can ride or not ride or whatever. I don't know. But for M-Space, science fiction, we already have so much technology that allows us to do things that the physicality of a person's body is like somehow it could be worked around in just setting and technology. But on the other hand, when I think about adventuring, like scientists, sci-fi scientists adventuring to a planet or whatever, like there are moments where, the scrawny little dude who's brilliant at decoding, alien runes is in an ancient alien temple, and you need the big strong guy to just like shove open a weird door. So maybe there's a place for that. Size is such a weird stat. Yep. Sure is. I think it factors into hit points. I think hit points is based on size and constitution, if I'm remembering correctly. I rarely see BRP games remove it, and it seems off in a lot of games. Yeah. And again, I was doing like a first wave of hacks. We might even look at some of my hacks if we feel like it today. But in my first wave anyway, I was like, let's preserve the absolute bones of the system. You can take this and build something new from the ground up and just put things into slots that you take things out of. But I was more interested in trimming down the skill list, because you'll see I think there's 70 skills. This is way too many for me, but it's also not too many. We'll get to it. But I trimmed it down, and I actually ended up going with like skill buckets. And rather than having just like 70 skills, I had base skills, and you had to have a ranking in the base skill in order to take the advanced skill within that skill. So like I made it so there's a science skill. You can use that for anything science related. But if you have a specialty, and there are specialties, we'll get to it. If you had a specialty in like biology, and you had points in that too, then you basically roll the combined number, I think is what I did. The combined number of the science and the biology. So you basically got an extra 20%, kind of, so to speak. I think that's what I did. Anyway, let's see what they mean by these attributes? Characteristics, see? Characteristics. That's such a strange word to me for what are stats everywhere else. Strength represents physical strength, how much you can lift, how hard you can hit, and so on. It is a component of damage. And yeah, constitution is a measure of health and hardiness, component in hit points and healing rate. Size measures mass and helps indicate height and weight. Size is used to help figure hit points, as larger, heavier creatures tend to have greater endurance against damage. So it's interesting that they made this note. It factors into hit points, but in an endurance way, whereas constitution factors into hit points, but from a health and a hardiness way. It's neat that they made that distinction. Size can also be used to determine a character's damage modifier, since mass helps to increase the force of a blow. Dexterity, agility, balance, and reflexes are measured by dex. Okay, so there is a thing in the game called action points. But Mythos Imperative, and even in the rules here when we get to it, it's basically like, yeah, don't use this rule, just give everybody 2 action points. So there is a world where you could use the action point system, and then you could say, well, now I want to use my stats and lean more towards dex and intelligence, because they're going to combine to tell me how many action points I get. But then the game's just like, just give everybody 2, I think. And initiative. So there's an initiative system. Intelligence, cognitive ability, calculating action points, and initiative. Okay, power. Power is the other weird one. So BRP does not have will, if you notice. D&D likes have strength, con, dex, int, wisdom, charisma. So they've added size, and then will becomes power. And power is weird. Power is a measurement of different things. Thank you. It can be, for example, a measure of a character's soul, spirit, inner drive, or capacity for psionics. Power governs a character's power points and luck points. If a character's power ever drops to 0, they lose all independent will. I know when I was hacking this, I wrote out like a whole thing, and I was like, okay, what is this characteristic actually doing, and what do I want to see it do in a game that I'd be making, and is it worth keeping, or should I throw it out? And I think I ended up going with something that was very much like almost a spiritual, like, if you have the worldview of like everything is energy and we're all interacting with each other, I was looking at power as like you're operating at a higher vibration, like you're more in touch with the universe, and as a result, you get benefits to stuff you try and do, which is kind of like a Taviran, like Wheel of Time kind of thing, where it's like the pattern weaves around these people. I was like, let's just, I mean, it's gonna be there. Let's just lean into it and say that that's what it is. So power is poorly named. I agree. But this is an artifact of keeping it in line with its lineage. You know, I wonder if the author may have chosen a different name for this, assuming they would have even kept it, right? But you know, it's not the end of the world to have something that's known by people who are familiar with these systems, to have that resonance as they come into it. So I get it. But you know, and charisma. measures personality, and is independent of physical appearance. They make that clear. There are BRP games that have, what is it called in Pendragon? App, right? APP. It's the appearance score. So you actually have a characteristic for like how attractive they are, and I have a hard time justifying why that needs to be anywhere, and I'm sure that Pendragon goes to extreme lengths to be like, well, no, because it's emulating mid-century, whatever. I don't know. So I'm glad that they cleared this up here. Okay, we also have some different character calculating characteristics methods. Here is the core one, 3d6 down the line, 2d6 plus 6 for size and int. Other species may use different dice. Or you can do dice roll assign. So you generate the column of numbers, but then you get to choose where they go. You can do a dice pool and assign dice to the stats, characteristics, and then roll those. Or you can do a point build, and it also says come up with your own method if you want. Go for it. You're not going to break this game because it's not a balanced game. It's not designed to be a balanced game. It's basically going to be like things are going to be as hard as the GM throws things at you, or as easy as they throw things at you, and it's just a matter of like how good are you at the things you're good at, and can you overcome whatever challenges you face. So attributes. These are a set of attributes, capabilities derived from the characteristics, like we've been saying, and you have action points, damage, experience, healing rate, hit points, initiative, luck, power, and movement rate. Now, some of these are unique to, not unique, sorry. Some of these I have less experience with, and so it took me a minute to be like, oh, that's a thing? Wow. So when you add your size and strength together, you should be hitting, you hope, a 21 to 25 if you want to have a +0 modifier. Otherwise, you're going to have these incremental, like, little damage bonuses to things. And look, you can tell this is not just for player characters, because 111 to 120 combined total, you get to add 2d10 plus 1d2. Crazy. Okay, so action points. Here we go. How often a character can act in a round is determined by action points. For simplicity, the M-Space rules grant all characters with 2 action points. The full Mithras rules can give characters a different number depending on their dex and int. So this simplicity here actually is a kind of a nerf to dex and int, because they used to actually matter as far as giving you more action. So if you wanted to play that way, you could. Let's look at the table. Page 54. We are very far away from page 54. Action points. 55. 54. I do not see a table. That says 54. Bear with me. I know this is somewhere. We're gonna do the old search. The old searchy search. See if I can find it. Adobe. Thank you. Took its sweet time. I know I've read this in the book, so I'm like genuinely confused why I can't find it right now. Okay, it's a failure. We've done a complete failure. I don't know. If it turns up, we'll look at it. It's gonna be right here, isn't it? I don't know what the M is for in M space. Oh, it's for Mithras, of course. Yeah, it's nothing sci-fi in the world. Mithras space is basically what it is. You almost stumped me there. You almost got me. Okay, we're back with action points, damage modifier, experience modifier. Now this is neat too. Over the course of play, characters improve their skills and capabilities. This is achieved through the use of experience rolls, which are explained in more detail on page 38. So, you do not get experience points. You get experience rolls, and those rolls give you the chance to have an increase to your characteristics. Or your skills, sorry, rather. I think this is neat. I know this is the way that it's done in Dragonbane, which Dragonbane is basically a BRP-derived system that branched off, and they just said, let's divide everything by 5, so we're rolling D20s instead of D100s. I was tempted to do that exact thing here. I was also fiddling with like an entire system about reducing everything down to just a D6 roll. Because how many degrees of success do you need, really? But anyway, I figured if I'm going to play this, I want to play it with the D100 rules and get a feel for it. So yeah, you earn experience rolls, and then your charisma score adjusts the number of experience rolls they have. Okay, so if you have 6 or less charisma, you get a -1 experience modifier, 7 to 12, 0, 13 to 18, +1, and every 6 points thereafter, another +1. So I think that's when they're issued, you do the modifier. So it's like, hey, you got 3 experience rolls, and if you have 6 or less charisma, you're like, I only get 2. It's representing, and it's weird to be tied to charisma, so I went around this in my head as well for a while, and I was like, I guess you could represent that as charisma being to some degree your, because it says it measures personality. I was coming at it, again, transparently, trying to justify why it is this way. I was like, maybe it has something to do with like being interested in growing or learning, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I had to go around and around in my head to try and justify it. So, because the answer is because that's the way we always used to do it, I guess, as far as the system goes. But you could also just not use this. Just strip this out of the game entirely and just be like, when I give you experience rolls, you get experience rolls, and it's not derived off charisma. That would not break anything either. So, healing rate. Based on your con, right? Yeah. So, based on your constitution, this tells you how much health you recover over time. Okay, this is... Let me keep going back to the main screen. This is interesting to me because by the nature of having this rule, you're saying your character is going to heal at different rates. Now, what does that mean for you practically? It means a couple things. One, the person with the high healing rate is hopefully also, they have a high con, is hopefully also your tank, your damage soak, your brawler. You're like, I'm the one protecting this scientific expedition, so I'm going to be the one that throws myself in front of danger because I heal faster than everybody else. And that's fine. What it also tells me is like, if everybody gets damaged equally and you need to like go and have your little rest moment, you're going to have characters who take prohibitively longer to heal, and therefore the mechanics of healing force you into downtime narrative moments, because now you got Mr. Weak Scientist guy with his big round scientist glasses who's just like, woe is me, I'm healing so slowly, and everybody else is like, well, we can't go on without him, or maybe we can, but now we're going to sit here, and now it's like, okay, well, it's going to take him this many hours to heal. So the system has now dictated how much downtime you're spending. So have a conversation between your characters. Spend time doing rolls or checks to try and like figure out knowledge stuff. So this is what I mean by like, it's not really simulating, because it's not about setting DCs for every little thing. That's what I think of when I think of simulation systems, is a lot of DCs that take into account the specifics of the situation at hand. This is more emulating sort of a realism, it stumbles into narrative realism by having a rigid framework of, if you want to call it simulation or emulation. So I think that's neat. I think it's neat. D100 mostly lets you have very slow stat skill progression but still give rewards each session. Yeah. Well, here's the other thing I like about the experience rules. When I've talked about the rune mechanic resolution, which I need to go back and restudy again, or I could just wait till they update again. In a sci-fi system that does everything that I've described so far, I'm not looking to give players experience rewards for every little thing they do. I think that's a fine way to go for systems that are about progression, that are about that. But I want there to be fewer but larger rewards, where the rewards are actually the discoveries that you make in the world. The rewards are accomplishing something. The rewards are like, hey, we figured out how these aliens used to harvest this plant that we couldn't figure out before, and when we derive this thing and synthesize it, we have come up with a new vaccine for something that's fucking up that world over there, and because we explored and found it, and found out a way to harvest this thing, and a process to do it, because we read the alien script and look at their hieroglyphics of how they harvested this stuff, now we have changed the world. Like, that's what I want my discovery rewards to be for players in a system of the kind that I'm imagining. And in a similar way, you go out there and you have these less frequent rewards, which are these experience rolls, rather than getting 100 XP, 200 XP, 400 XP, which again is fun and awesome in the right system. Here it's like, you earned 3 experience rolls, and you're like, hot damn, like, I could put those into trying to be better at science. I could put those into trying to be better at linguistics. I could put those into trying to be better at whatever. Hey, Thaddeus.
Message. I love a sci-fi game. Maybe M-Space will serve as my sci-fi game to run once I go back and watch the VOD.
Ooh, Thaddeus, if you run it, let me know. Thank you so much for the donation. I really, really, really appreciate it. I really think this game does a lot of what I want from sci-fi by just getting out of the way and just being like, here's a framework. You know what kind of stories you want to tell? And I was talking to Thaddeus the other day about, like, there are genres that I'm just not experienced with. Horror, because I'm not into it. Cyberpunk, like with the dystopian and the corpo and everything like that. I'm just not experienced in it. I feel like I need to, like, be in a really good cyberpunk game, or like actually read Otherscape, or like other cyberspace or cyberpunk media. Sci-fi is something that I feel like, for the type of sci-fi I like, I know exactly what I want it to look and feel like. I know exactly what I want that to be. And so M-Space has been really exciting to me for a long time because of that. So, oh yeah. Charisma is about finding trainers. That's a decent way to look at it. Yeah. It could be, for sure. I wonder if I also arrived at that same conclusion. I don't remember how robust my notes were when I was reading this the first time, but anyway. Okay, hit points. Body of every creature is divided into separate locations. But where does it say? Here we go. It's also possible to run in space without hit locations. See Simplified Combat on page 75 for more details. Yeah, we will be doing that. We will not be reading the standard combat, because I'm not interested in it. I don't care about it. And even people who love certain game systems, like RuneQuest, Adventures in Glorantha, even people who love that game have been like, what is this combat? Why can I be one-shot with a spear to the head? What kind of stories is this game trying to tell, and does it line up with the mechanics? And the answer is no, it doesn't. But, anyhow. Initiative bonus. Average of the dex and int characteristics. I think that's fun, too. That it's derived, but it's an average. I don't see that very often. So if you want to have high initiative, you have to have them high in both, not just one or the other. It's kind of cool. Luck points represent that strange force differentiating adventuring heroes from everyday folk. Call it fate, karma, or simple good fortune. Luck points can be used to do some stuff. I don't know that these have a place in the game I want either. I don't know how I feel about luck. I like detailed Mithras combat, but it is a lot. I believe you. Have you looked at Starforge? I have not. I don't remember why I haven't. I think I did kind of peek at it, and maybe something turned me off of it. Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, luck. Luck in a game like I am thinking about is just... I don't know. I just don't know. One thing I'll say about the art in this game, they just have these like headshot portraits throughout, and I love them because they're just like, here's a normal person. Here's a normal person in this setting, and a little, whatever. Niam's player has 100 points to spend on her orbital culture skills and 100 more for her detective career skills. She spends the final 150 points freely. Right, so that is the culture bucket. This is the career bucket. And then there's the free spend. 100, 100, 150. Okay, so luck can let you re-roll the dice, mitigate physical damage, or gain an edge at a vital moment in combat. Now, there are a lot of games that have a lot of mechanics for basically like, we know that dice can be mean, and when they're too mean, like here's your get out of jail free card, but not an infinite get out of jail free card, but like it's here for you if you really need to not crit fail a save in Pathfinder, for example. Here's your hero point. What's interesting about this is that it ties it to your power. So you can actually invest in being more lucky than other characters. And I think that's weird because they give you an alternate rule for making everybody have the same amount of action points. They don't give you an alternate rule for having everybody have the same healing rate or for everybody having the same luck points. But I think if you did that, you would just be like tightening up an already simplified system and making it even simpler. Okay, here's the deal. Everybody gets 2 action points. Everybody heals at a rate of 2 per. Everybody gets 2 luck points. Call it a day. I think you can absolutely do that. And for a simplified like first run of this with new players who are new to it, if I was going to, I would probably do something like that. And then I might say, you know, there are rules and mechanics for these being determined by your stats. So somebody could be more lucky than somebody else. Somebody could heal faster than somebody else. Somebody could have more actions than somebody else. You know, and maybe that's even like you run a session 2 or 3 with it with just 2s down the line. And then you say, okay, now how do you guys feel about changing it up so that now it matters what your characteristics are for these things? Go run some Blades. Yeah. Thank you. I will have a great stream. I appreciate it. Blades in the Dark. Great game. Having more action points is really OP. I can imagine. All right. When one is out of luck points, no more are available unless the game's master makes an impromptu award until the next game session when they replenish to their normal value. So it's by session. Power points. Now, what the hell are power points? For those who can utilize such powers, a character's power points are equal to their power characteristic. These points are used for psionics, the cost of which is dependent on the type of power used. So I would not be using that at a game outset, probably. But you never know. Sometimes you have a session 0 and somebody's like, no, I really want to engage with this. Here's my idea. Here's how I think it'll be fun. You're like, yeah, okay, if I buy off on it. Movement rate, specific number of meters. So we're doing distances in meters. Movement is not calculated from characteristics, but is a default value from species to species, which is, it's just interesting how certain things are condensed to be the same for everybody and certain things are not. Like movement speed would be I would think one of the easier things to have separate based on a characteristic, but it's not, so it's very interesting. Now here's your hit points per location, so look at it now because you're never going to see it again, not on this stream. Skills fall into 2 classes. Everyone has standard skills, things such as sneaking around or influencing others. Professional skills, on the other hand, are those requiring specific training before they can be attempted. Things such as tracking wild animals, piloting a spacecraft, or understanding ancient languages. Characters are given 3 pools of points to spend on acquiring skills. The first pool for the culture they grew up in, the second for the career, and the last to further round out their skill set. We've seen this now. This is the 3rd time. Good reinforcement. I don't mind reinforcement in rules. Each culture and career has a defined set of standard and professional to choose from for which they can be assigned. And they have their base value and then the points that you put in on top. So this is very, like bookkeeping as far as character creation. You do have to like sit there with your character sheet. I have something in my eye. Ugh. You have to put all the numbers down on your character sheet, total them up. But once they're totaled up in there, they're there. They're good to go. So you only have to do that once. The skill list, like I said, I already took a hacksaw to this and combined a ton of stuff. And the reason to combine skills, I feel, is not that like it's just simply too many skills. It's that like what does it mean? Let's see if I can find a good example. What does it mean to have somebody who is good at sing but bad at dance? Well, it seems obvious at first glance. I'm going to come back over here. It seems straightforward. They're good at singing and not good at dancing. Fine. So in situations where singing could be helpful, then they're good at it. When situations when dancing would be helpful, they can't really be good at it. But from a macro storytelling perspective, assume there exists a perform skill. What what do you really gain from saying like, aha, you're good at singing but not dancing, so you're screwed here? Or another character is going to have to step in and do it. So you can do it to like focus on characterization and specialization, things like that. But here's my contention. If you have a perform skill, you're going to have a character who thinks of themselves in a certain way. And you could ask them, is your character good at singing? And they'd be like, no. So when it comes time and you're going to ask for a perform check that has to do with singing, a player might say, yeah, I have a high rank in perform, but my character's not good at singing. So like, I'm not going to participate in this role. They could do that. There's nothing keeping them from saying, that's not what my perform is. You could do it that way. But the question really becomes like, what do you get from a storytelling point to have all of these little splits when you could have a perform? And you could have a perform that has a specialization in singing or a specialization in dancing, and then you could put points into that, and I think that's what I ended up doing with my hack, so that you can still express that if you want to, but anybody who can perform at any level has a baseline level of performance, so they're not just going to like fall on their butt because they tried to dance one time. Anyway, there's arguments on both sides, but like, I just feel like there's a lot of skills. There's so many skills. Maybe I should, this is probably a good moment for me to pull up my spreadsheet of hacks that I've made for this game already. If I can even find it. Last modified January 4th. Wow. It's pre-channel time. I guess I got busy with something. It's to slow down character progression. Again, they want you to get skill upgrades, but never be really good unless you play for years. Yeah, and that's fair, because actually, one of the things I would want to do, well, yeah, see, okay. I was going to say one of the things I would want to do is to tell large, long-scale, sweeping stories, but you know what? I actually don't want to tell the same character's story throughout this game for, like, prolonged time. When I thought up, like, all of the concepts that go into London Station and Eidolon, the planet down on the surface, and the moons, and, like, exploring and everything like that, I really thought of it in a way of, like, you're not going to be good at everything. And I don't think that in a world of a skill-based game that you should be necessarily improving at everything, and you wouldn't be. But I really think of it as a way of like, you need to bring the guy who studied that alien language. You need to bring that guy. So you as a player, I think it's more interesting in a system like this to have a stable of characters. And I even considered, like, if I were to do this as a mega game, which I would love to do the London Station actual channel lore as a game, using a base system such as this, and say, yeah, you can earn another character. You can spend a meta disc if I want to tie it to meta discs, which I probably shouldn't. But to buy another character, and then you can make somebody who's good at that thing that you guys need. And then you can say, we're going to go back down to that one ruin site with the guy who's actually good at that language. I think those stories could be really fun. I don't know. Maybe they'd be boring to everybody else, and I'm just crazy. But that's kind of what I'm after. Rather than having, like, this is the adventuring party of 4 people, and they all get, like, better at things as they go. It's like, no, go get the specialist. Like, what are we doing here? Anyway. And that's an artifact of having a localized space station that you can draw on multiple characters from, which I took that inspiration from Phantasy Star Online, of having a singular main location for all the characters, and then they get teleported down to the planet's surface to do stuff. That's the dynamic I want to go, minus the teleportation. I want you to take a ship down there. Let's go troop play. Yep. This is where I think you would like the skill system in Imperium Maledictum. It's very possible. I do tend to like a lot of things. Mothership just makes training a skill take forever and costs a lot of money, even though there aren't a ton of skills and you don't get individual ranks. Another way to do the same thing. Isn't Mothership trying to kill you all the time, though? It's like, why do you even have a progression? I don't know anything about Mothership. Don't come at me. Don't come after me. All right, let's see. I'm gonna pull up my notes here. I gotta turn on this. Hello. Oh, it's set to the wrong thing. And then I gotta do this. Okay, this is gonna be unreadable to you guys. Here's my notes that I like. Do I want a narrative outcome range, or do I want to present a clear challenge obstacle to be overcome? I definitely want partial successes. Does Mithras give that to me? Do I just trust the system? Other note, way too many skills, way too many professions, not enough cultures. Number of skills, 61 WTF. These are my notes from last year. This system is very pass-fail. In my head, I'm trying to think of ways to change that to a more mixed success model, but what if I turn that on its head? What if it's pass-fail because you have to go get a specialist and come back? What if the game is about unlocking checks and then passing them as a community? Wouldn't that be fun? What are these things then? Mysteries, cores, just checks. This is when I was theory crafting and came up with the idea of locks. And then there's a whole subsystem I invented for that. Yeah, this is kind of how COC should be played because there's so many skills you want to be able to call on the various specialists you might need. Mothership's training is just fake. It's the mirage of an oasis in the desert. You can also die very easily in Mithras, to be frank. Well. Let's see. All right. Where is my actual working sheet? Okay, this was me mapping out a grid of like actual dice results. Trying to just get my head around it. Okay, so there's two sheets here that are most relevant. This is how I redid the skills. I know this looks insane. But I had it be, I don't remember how I was going to do this. Athletics was based on strength plus dex, but if you had a specialization in brawn, you would then add size as well. So if you're rolling brawn, you would roll strength, dex, size. Or combine them, I'm sorry. You would combine them for the total. You would have that total right here, and you would be rolling against that. If you were doing something that was athletics, specialized in swim, you would have strength, dex, plus swim. Rather than have swim be its own skill, because who's going to invest in swim? The thing about like the weird one-off skills like that is like, yeah, okay, you make your diver character to go with my original idea. You make your extraterrestrial diver, and they're going to go down and find these sunken ruins, and so they're the specialist you bring when you want to go diving, and that's fine. But I wanted it to be like at least somewhat attainable to other characters, because mostly if you go athletics and specialize into swim, that's like a dead pick. Like how many times are you swimming, unless a GM looks at your character sheet and says, "Oh man, John has a really good swim skill, and he's never getting a chance to use it. I should design some content based around swimming." And it's this weird like, the world is malleable to the abilities of the characters rather than the characters just being there. When you have a swim skill, though, skills tell you what content you need to make, by the way. You guys probably already intuit a lot of this stuff. But a game's skill list tells you what sorts of challenges you should be putting out on aggregate. Because if you ignore certain skills, you're just reinforcing the play loop of not taking them. If you don't give people who take them an opportunity to use them, they're going to feel bad and like they wasted their choice. So there's already a lot of, I would say there's a lot of like ingrained culture in RPGs around these niche skills getting ignored because they're not rewarded when they're taken. I have a character in New Dawn called Maple, and I was like, I'm going all in on water stuff. She's got a swim speed because of her ancestry. When I choose her spells, I'm like, these spells are not the meta spells, but they're the ones that interact with water, so I'm taking them. Until or unless there's actually like a water significant mission, she's kind of not a good character. Yeah, she can still smack things with her trident and blast holy light every now and then, but like, you know? And New Dawn, again, is not like a single GM thing, so it's not like one person needs to be curating everything like that comes out there. But anyway, I can tell my chat is not updating again. There we go. Then Runeway did that better. Yeah. The locks, yeah. Runeway, I don't remember even how much I had gone along my design route, but basically I was going to have it be something about like if you had somebody on site that had the right specialization, it gave you like a plus 10% bonus or something, like a synergy bonus or something like that. But I was still tying it into the D100 results, which I would have to do with Runeway too, because I'm not going to put a bag of runes on the table. But yeah. I would do the opposite. The player should be smarter about choices. Yeah, I don't know. There's 61 skills, Thaddeus. 61. So what did I get down to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I got it down to 15 base skills with another 5, 9, 14, 19, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 35, 41, 43, 46, 49, 52, and 55. So I actually have still on this chart 60 things. 15 base and whatever I just said for the other thing. 45 specialized? Yeah. But yeah, I did some things that I thought were pretty clever. I mean, I'm a fan of myself, but you know. Hold on, let me zoom better. Like I made like a transportation-based skill. Because here's the thing. Driving a boat is not the same as flying a plane. It's not the same as flying a spaceship. But I do think it's fair to say that like if you are any level of skill with transportation, then it stands to some sort of reason. I don't know why this isn't showing. It stands to some sort of reason that you could use that to apply to other things. And then again, basically, like you're like, why would you add Constitution if you're specialized in the thing? Well, it's about holding course. It's about fortitude. It's about sitting in the chair for a long time. Whatever you want to call it. So, and then I broke that down to landcraft, watercraft, flightcraft. I even combined spacecraft and aircraft because I feel like that's a thing that like you could have enough cross experience with that it would be all right. The one thing is that those specializations are going to have a massive bump since you're adding 3 attribute scores. Yeah, but I took a bunch of points away to compensate. Not like I haven't codified that yet, but that's what I would do. I was in the process of designing this so that it would result in similar numbers, just by shrinking the amount of points you can spend at character creation. In fact, I don't think I have points. I don't remember. Anyway, this is the sheet that I made to try and translate everything. So this, I already went through. These are all the cultures. No, these are the cultures. There's only 3. And then all the professions and everything that they get access to. And then I looked at it like a heat map, like what is getting a lot of love, what is not. If I change things, what needs to stay, what needs to go away, what have I added? So I had like my medicine, I have first aid and surgery as separate things because I think that's kind of neat. So you can still, if you're decent at, medicine, you can still attempt surgery. But if you're specialized into it, you're going to be even better at it and you're going to get to add another int bonus. Yeah. I put a decent amount of time and thought into this, and then I was like, shouldn't I just play the game as written first? And I was like, I don't know, I'm bored and in exile, so I think these are the ones I got rid of. Yeah, so I got rid of willpower was a skill, bureaucracy, gambling, knowledge, language, research, seamanship, teach, vac-suit, 0G, and craft. I some of these I got rid of because they're just gone. Some of these I got rid of because I combined them. Some of them I got rid of because I actually split them up into more. So realistically, you should have to be trained at specific advanced vehicles like an aircraft, but that would be too complex for most games. Oh yeah, you would have to, it would have to be craft by craft, but yeah, that would be insane. Anyway, so back to the actual game. There's a lot of skills. And there's a method for, putting your points into the skills, and then when the check comes up, you try to roll under your percentage. So it has that nice synergy if you guys aren't familiar. I know you guys are all familiar. Somebody watching this in the future, your percentage skill literally tells you your percentage of success. Because if you have a 75, it means that there are 75 numbers that you would get a success on. So it's a straight brain, like 75 means 75% chance. And you don't have to calculate odds. Whereas if you're like, I need an 18 on the D20, it's like, well, that's a 15% chance because you can succeed on 18, 19, 20. But you have to look at how many numbers are there, multiply that by 5, and that's the percentage. You intuit this over time, but this is very much more straightforward. Even 2 planes from the same manufacturer could be very different. I bet. It's kind of funny. Obviously, aircraft, much more highly specialized, equipment. But for something to become a commercial industry, it has to be standardized enough to the point where you could jump into pretty much any vehicle, car, and drive it. With the exception of the manual automatic transmission split, cars are designed for anybody to be able to sit in the seat and more or less figure it out, which is just kind of funny. But they're not flying through the air. So here's our standard skills. And I went through, as I was understanding this, I went through and I like nitpicked the language of each of these skills to make sure I understood what it was trying to represent. Because when I didn't want to sacrifice something without understanding what it was for. So like here's one, native tongue, your int and your charisma, but you get a plus 40 bonus because it literally is the ability to speak one's own language. And it measures articulation, eloquence, and the depth of the speaker's vocabulary. I don't think that's useless. I don't think that's not interesting, but what did I do with it? I made a base skill called society, and then I made a specialization called language, and I think I had my societies set up so that like you could take the specializations multiple times, and I was going to make that not penalizing somehow. But like your own ability to speak your own language was a part of that too. In fact, it looks like I did give them the base 40 bonus. Anyway, this is not a design stream. Sorry, I keep getting into it. Combat styles you use for combat, of course. And then professional skills. These go on and on and on. Musicianship was a professional skill. So, yeah. It's very interesting. It's like, why is this here? And part of why it's here, I think, as well, is because the game has said up front, like, hey, I'm not giving you a setting. This is just, it's sci-fi. There's spaceships, okay? And you can use whatever you want to from these things. Or not. But it is kind of interesting, some of the things that turn up. Navigation is different than astrogation, by the way. I think I combined them because I was like, I get it. Navigating through the stars is a very different skill than, like, reading a map. But I was like, I think that there would be some overlap. The people that are good at one would be slightly good at the other, even if they had never really studied it. I think there would be some crossover there. So where did I put that? No, I didn't. I kept them separate. So there are some things where I kept things separate to make meaningful choices. That's cool. Oratory, etc., etc. Look at this ship, by the way. Isn't this a cool ship? I really dig it. Take it in. That's a cool ship. Okay. Culture. So the 3 cultures that they give you are rural, urban, and orbit. So you're either in a city on a planet, you're not in a city on a planet, or you live in space. Or you were raised in space. And I think that's interesting. It's interesting when you consider and look at the cross hash of what skills they get and don't get. So like, okay, so the urban, the city one, they got the ability to put points into art. The other 2 don't. The rural got the ability to put things into athletics, brawn, endurance. The other 2 didn't. Deception and concealing went for the urban and the orbit, but not the rural. So it's interesting, like you can use that to kind of tell stories about people, but it's like, those buckets are so broad. So I think one of my ideas was, if I were to write this up, if I were to write the Lambda Act, the game, which is a hack of MSpace, which is a hack of Mithras Imperative, which is a hack of Mithras, which is a hack of RuneQuest, which is a hack of BRP, if you want to call everything hacks down the line, I would probably bulk up the culture section. I would present a setting, a loose setting, but like there are some assumptions in the London Station setting that I would carry through. And then I would probably revisit the professions as well. I know I'm looking at a different screen than you guys are, and I apologize. Okay, so you spend points, we get that. That's all good and well. Then you pick a career, and so this is an example. Like if you're an agent, then you can put 100 points spread out as you choose between any of these skills. Your 100 from your career have to go into these skills, and I think I do like that. I do like that as a mechanic because it really doesn't mean that 2 agents are going to be even remotely the same. So in a way, like your agent career doesn't mean a whole lot as far as what results as a person and a character, and I think that's neat. You can fall into like the sort of like class trap in a lot of games where it's like, well, I'm a barbarian, so I kind of already have a picture of what that looks like, what my character looks like, and it takes intentional effort to steer away from that. Whereas with this, it's like it would take intentional effort to be like, I need to be an agent. Because when you end up with a character sheet that's generated from this, if you erased the word agent and you handed it to somebody to be like, what do you think this person does for a profession? They'd be like, I have no idea. Or they'd come up with a lot of guesses. But I think that could be really fun, actually. So I like how the culture and the careers work mechanically. I do think it's neat. I do like it. So there are a lot of them. Of course, if you want to read them, buy the book. Passions. Now, passions are kind of interesting. You can have a passion for a person, organization, or an ideal, even an object, and basically anytime that passion would be invoked, you can use it to add power to your thing that you're trying to do. So that's basically it. Passions are any deeply held commitment that has the capacity to influence events during play. Although they are viewed as standalone abilities, to call them skills is to do them a disservice. Passions can be used thus to augment another skill, so you can use that to get a bonus, as an ability in its own right to drive choices, desires, and emotional actions and responses. I do like that mechanically. We do this a lot in New Dawn. We call them the hippo rolls or the composure rolls sometimes, where we're just like, well, I could see my character really wanting to make this bad choice because of something about them that they feel very strongly, and we will roll for that. But we do it on the fly, and it's kind of like, well, ultimately we're just kind of coming down to like, what % chance do I think they're going to fall on one side or the other of this binary decision they're about to make? Or, if it's on the extreme ends, like how drastic it is, which is where I like the drama die from Blue Rose and the age system as well, by the way. It kind of makes me want to invent a passion roll for New Dawn. I'm getting too many good ideas today. Could you imagine that? A 3d6 passion roll? You set a DC. Pendragon traits are omnipresent. What do you mean by that, Thaddeus? The traits kind of weird me out. The moving of them left and right and all that stuff. And I know that's here too. To oppose other passions, so you can do a contested roll between your two passions, which is neat. Somewhere here, where does it talk about? You can substitute a passion if somebody's trying to make you do something you don't want to do. I could have sworn that this had sort of the Pendragon style, where it's like if you fail, then it weakens your passion or something like that. But I don't mind if that's not here because I kind of don't like it. Here we go. This is loose, but a passion can be improved in the same way as a skill, or it can be increased or decreased by the referee depending on circumstances. So, yeah. All right, equipment, my least favorite thing in the world. Oh, I know. Yeah, they're literally, they're from the same DNA, so I figured as much. I just get really prickly about the way Pendragon does it for some reason, even though I've been corrected and educated about it every single time that I go on my little tizzy about it. There's just something about it that just irks me. Anyway. Okay, so what do we do for equipment? Starting equipment. Clothes. A small amount of money. 2d6 times 1,000 credits. I kind of have like a soft spot for like rolling for starting money. I like it. I kind of like rolling for stats too in the right game, but don't do it in Pathfinder. You have to have an effective character in Pathfinder. Trade tools or transportable equipment suitable to the character's profession, if appropriate. Okay, so your profession also gives you like relevant gear, so that's kind of cool. Any personal weapon for the character's combat style, other items as appropriate, and subject to the GM's approval. So that's it. It's just like you've got what makes sense and some money. I like that. Here's some art. All of the art in this book, by the way, is like what I would call tonal pieces. They're not depicting specific things because there's nothing specific to depict. They're just trying to give you a sense of scale. This piece here gives me a sense of wonder. It asks more questions than it answers, which makes it exciting to look at. So that's what like all the art pieces in this book do. Look at that. That just gives me so many questions. Like this hut right here. Why is it up on this precarious rock like that?
And then I immediately start to think like, okay, well maybe there's like creatures that you want to have like sight lines down to that you don't want them skittering up, and maybe you like blast them away with a shotgun in the middle of the night because it's some sort of horror planet. Who knows? These giant trees, so cool. Anyway, game system. Part of the fun and drama of M-Space comes in making a roll against a skill to see if success or failure is the outcome. It can be tempting to call for skill rolls for each and every challenge, but there are some cases where rolls are not needed. However, when the action becomes, here's our keywords, dramatic or extraordinary, every game has this. Every game tells you where to roll, every game tells you when to stop, because the game cares about that particular thing. The game is therefore about the thing that it tells you to roll for. In my opinion. And I know that article that was going around for a while, I meant to read that on stream someday, where it was like, games are actually about what they don't have rules for. And I was like, interesting take. I think I disagree. But the article is, very cleverly written and has a lot of good points. It's usually obvious when a skill roll is necessary, but if in doubt, consider the consequences of failure. Are they crucial to the plot? Does the chance of failure heighten tension and make for an exciting possibility? Will a failure add fun to the game? If the answer is yes to any of these, then have the character make a skill roll. I like that presentation of this. This is language. It's not unique to this game. This language shows up in a lot of games, but I like the way they did this. There's multiple questions. Crucial to the plot. Heightens tension or excitement. Or add fun. And if it's yes to any of them, which means it doesn't have to add fun if one of the other two is true. How do I succeed? You roll under your skill. Equal to or less than the skill indicates a success. Greater than the skill's value indicates a failure. And then there's little tiny rules for it. If you have a 99 or a 100, then you get a fumble, which is like a critical failure. Criticals and fumbles represent spectacular successes and failures, those cases where a character has either excelled in his attempt or failed miserably and utterly. There are certain special cases concerning success and failure that should be noted. Any roll of 1 to 5 is always a success. Any roll of 96 to 100 is always a failure, irrespective of how high the skill's value. And that is where I was like, I need to map this out. So I'm gonna go back here. Hold on. This is what I made. I did all the maths and I calculated all the whatevers. So this along the bottom is your characteristic score up to 100, and you can go beyond 100 too. But your critical range goes up. As we saw, every 10, you basically get one more point that you can crit on. So this is a gradual slope right here of what you can crit on. And then your success, of course, is going to go up linearly. But it caps out right here. So this is what that rule was just saying. This is why I needed to can I not zoom more than 200? Oh my gosh. Hold on. Let's zoom back out here and let's actually just make this bigger and then zoom in. Okay, so you see this success plateaus right here because any roll from 96 and above is a failure. And then here's the funny thing. You see this little red, you can't see it on the screen. That's a bummer. There's this little red notch here because when you get to 100 or above, your crit chance goes from 2% down to 1%. There's a little tiny notch here where it's a regular failure. But yeah, you have this crit failure band, and then, what is the blue? Oh, augmentation. So the blue is how much you can add to another skill by using that skill. And it's not really clear on the whatever. Anyway, that is what all that means. Back to the sheet. The book, I mean, rather. So yeah, you can modify skills, which, it's... Oh, this is not about what I thought it was. Modifying skills is about modifying basically what I would call the DC. So the simplified difficulty grade table is what I would use. If something would be very easy, then they get a plus 40 to their skill, which they don't actually get more skilled in it. It's just representing that the numbers are going to be easier to hit. If it's easy, plus 20, standard none, minus 20, minus 40, minus 80% for Herculean tasks. So if you are a 100 skill person and you're going up against something Herculean, you have a 20% chance of success. So, pretty wild. Pretty wild. You can reattempt skills if you fail, if the GM says so. But this is the complicated one. Difficulty automatic, no need to roll. Very easy. Double the skill value. Easy. Add half again to the skill value. Hard. Reduce the skill value by 1/3. Formidable. Reduce the skill value by half. I'm like, nobody wants to do this at the table. Nobody wants to do this. Do the difficulty mods affect crit range? No. Yes. No? Let's find out. Yes, the chances for rolling a critical success or fumble are likewise adjusted after the effect of a difficulty grade has been applied. For instance, a character with Pilot Starship 65 would normally gain a critical success with a 7 or lower because they're in the 7th set of 10, because they're 61 to 70. But this would be reduced to 5 if suffering from a difficulty grade of hard. Hard, minus 20, would bring this down to 45, which means you're in the 5th set of 10s, so you crit on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you can do opposed rolls. So that's when you're rolling not against your own skill number, but against somebody else's skill number. And there's this whole thing about like when you're better at it, there's a degree of success, and it's kind of crunchy. Extended conflicts. Now these are cool. This is what I was initially looking at for. These are kind of like a victory point subsystem kind of a deal. Skill challenge, whatever you want to call it. An optional use of opposed rolls in MSpace is to use them for extended conflicts. Here, several opposed rolls are used, and the winner of each roll deals damage to a conflict pool derived from characteristics similar to the way hit points are used in combat. I genuinely like this a lot. A bargaining situation can, for example, use charisma as conflict pools. As one pool reaches 0, that part has lost the argument. This way, almost any type of conflict can be run in a more detailed manner. See more in the chapter Extended Conflicts on page 42. I like that. I really do. Really like it. Differential, degrees of success are calculated. These are the really complicated ones. Both participants roll against their respective skills, suffer the results of their roll as if tested in isolation. There's no outright winner per se, but whoever gained the higher level of success gains an advantage equal to the difference in the success levels between them. Assuming one participant gains at least a standard success or better. If both participants score the same level of success, then there is no additional effect. Cross-reference the table below to determine the outcome of the rolls. Look at that. Protagonist critical, antagonist failure. Protagonist wins 2 levels of success. So this is kind of insane. Kind of insane. All right, we got luck points. We saw loosely. We know they can make things better for you. Game time. In MSpace, time is an important factor, mostly to determine what happens in what order, so that game mechanics are applied when they should be. Remember that in-game time is usually not equivalent to time actually spent playing, right? Sometimes the GM may need to summarize the events of many days in a single sentence, such as, "It takes you a week to reach Constantinople." While at other times, particularly during combat, the actions of only a few seconds of time can take several minutes or longer to resolve. Okay, that was not as illuminating as I thought it was going to be. Injury and healing. This is not that kind of stream. We're not here for the injuries and healing. I wonder why they have this. Natural healing from wounds and injuries is based on the character's healing rate. We saw that. The healing rate dictates how many hit points are recovered depending on the injury's nature. Oh shit. Okay, this is cool. I didn't understand this 5 minutes ago, but I do now. So the healing rate, you'll remember, it was 1, 2, 3, and then +1 for every 6 after that. So if you really suck, then you have a healing rate of 1. So a wound will have a number? Why am I confusing myself now? Okay, thus a character with a healing rate of 3 who suffers a serious wound will heal naturally at a rate of 3 hit points per week until his injury... Okay, got it. Okay, so if you have a 1, you get 1 hit point per day on a minor wound. If you have a 3, you get 3 hit points per day on a minor wound. The degree here tells you if it's days, weeks, or months that you're counting. That's bonkers. So, yeah, on a major wound, that's so weird. Because the hit points are the same pool. But there are different types of hit point recovery. So not all hit points are created the same. losing hit points to a minor wound is so much better than losing hit points to a major wound. But, you know, this again, like I said in the beginning, this gives you the opportunity to tell stories such as, you know, oh, it's going to be months for you to recover. And then in that time, other stuff has happened, and like now we're preparing a new expedition to go back to the place that you got your ass kicked. So, tracking HP is so fiddly. I believe it. You kind of need... You have an HP total, but then you need 3 separate HP tracks to tell you the source of damage to each type of wound, I guess. But I think this could be fun to use. It's also something like the very beginning of the book said, like, hey, just use what you want, throw out what you don't. If you're like, I don't want to deal with this, you could just cut it out entirely. So, permanent injuries. Some major wounds inflict maiming injuries, for example, horribly crushed and severed limbs. It's a London Station stream. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Character improvement. Every character has the opportunity to improve their skills with time. They get experience rolls. They dispense experience rolls at an appropriate juncture in the campaign, so they're kind of milestone experience rolls. At the end of every successful scenario or storyline, or perhaps 2 or 3 sessions of play, if the story is a long one, which will take time to complete. Frequency is at GM's discretion. High frequency will lead to characters developing at a faster rate. Who would have thought? The number of experience rolls given in any one sitting should average between 3 and 5. That's across the whole party, but it can be lower or higher depending on how long it has been since the last set of rolls and how well the characters performed or have been played. Again, I said this before, with like the victories that I want characters to experience in a game like this, with the locks, I call them. The scientific discoveries that make meaningful impact to your lives and the lives of all of humanity and society. I want you to be excited to have discovered the chance to find something. And I think that's a tall order. I think that's going to be tough. If I write this game, I know this is an M-Space stream, not a Lambda Act stream, but if I were to write this game with my locks concept, I want you to feel excited because you found something that somebody somewhere can figure out. You found an opportunity. In fact, I was going to call them opportunities at one point. I want to build in an excitement to that in the same way that getting an experience roll is an opportunity to improve. So I think you need to really be intentional about how you deliver these things, because players, I don't think, are excited about opportunities because they could manifest into nothing. So how do you make them excited for the chance? Is a challenge that you'd have to solve for this. But interested in solving it. That's a cool art too. Kind of an in-progress drawing. Really cool. I guess I don't know art well enough, but this looks like watercolor effects. I like how that gives it a kind of a very real feeling. Anyway, it's recommended that all characters be given the same number of experience rolls. I don't know about that. I don't know. For like a mega game exploration game, maybe you gotta be awesome to earn stuff. Maybe you gotta. Any skill can be increased by spending an experience roll. They roll and you want to roll higher than the skill. And then when you succeed, you get a random amount of percentage increase, which you could change as well. But again, so if you run this game raw as written, you have random stat generation, random money starting, generation. You have random chance of even improving, random chance how much you improve, when you improve. You're like discovering. I think of M-Space as a game about discovery. I know it can tell a lot of stories. You're discovering things in the story. You're discovering things about the character yourself by disclaiming them to random generation. Not all characters have to be the same quality level, because your actual skill training matters so much. My vision for this, that it's not about who has the highest numbers on aggregate, because it's like they still need to come to the botanist to come figure out this alien plant. They still need to come to the guy who can fly the spaceship through the collapsing like anti-grav fields that's in this one canyon. Your skill specialties start to matter in a way that it's not about who has the best numbers or who's the highest level or who's played the longest, because you can just be a specialist and be valuable. So yeah. And if you have if you're doing a troop play, if you have a stable of characters, if we have a list of characters on the station, then it's like, oh man, like, did you see Jones? Jones just improved in his linguistic skill. That's awesome. Maybe now, not that it's going to be a drastic improvement, but like, that's great. Like, we love that he's good at deciphering alien languages, because when we go on missions down to the surface where we need to decipher alien languages, we take Jones. That's just what we do. It's almost to the point where you could almost play a mega game like this where you don't have player ownership of characters. Maybe you own one character, and then every other character is jointly owned by everybody else. So you can like stable your character and then pick up one of like the group's PCs and play them. That could be a fun way to do it too. If the number rolled is less than the skill still increases, but only by 1. So you get 1% minimum. That's good. If a character fumbles any skill during play, the fumbled skill gains a free increase of 1. That's awesome. That should not be in this section as far as like rules layout goes. This should be somewhere else. But you do get rewarded for crit fails, which means on a 99 or 100. So you have a 2% chance on every roll, 2% chance that you're going to increase your skill. Unless it's 100, then it's a 1% chance. So here again, some tonal artwork. This looks like it would be in a fantasy book. But like, you know, it just carries this interesting tone. I don't know. It's very neat. Extended conflicts. So this is your... you basically create a abstract situation that has a conflict pool, which is its HP, and then you can chip away at it with everybody. You know, it could be extended conflict is like gain access to the alien temple. And you're just like, yeah, do whatever you want to try and do this in a very like Legend in the Mist PBTA way. Like use whatever skill you want. Be like, okay, I'm going to use my linguistics to try and decipher any runes around. And like, okay, well, you've succeeded and you've depleted the conflict pool by 2 points. So you're that much closer to getting in. So you can have these really cool abstractions there. Or it could be like a really dramatic, like tense moment of combat even that's emulated without using the combat rules to do something of that sort. All right, conflict pools work like hit points. We know. Resolving a conflict. Do good, win better. Withdrawing damage. These are like when I do these first contacts for some of these game systems, it's like it's not even about the nitty-gritty about how the mechanics work, because you're gonna figure that out if you decide to play this and bring it to a table anyway. You're gonna study it and decide. You're gonna learn in the moment. So when we're looking at these, we're looking for that tone. We're looking for the guiding language and just kind of envisioning what kind of stories they could tell. So hope y'all like that style of looking at games, because as I'm doing this, I don't care about resolving a conflict. The reason I don't care is because I know now on page 44 I can go read a checklist that tells me everything I have to do. We don't need to study it together. It's gonna be fine. Okay, damage to conflict pools, choosing skills for conflict pools, example conflicts. Okay, let's look at an example conflict. This is really robust. Let's look at this poker game. So sorry, excuse me. In this poker game, the skill to be used is gambling. The conflict pool is int plus power divided by 2, so the average of int and power. Damage, 1d6 rolled once per round by the winner. All participants but the round winner takes the same amount of damage. Round length is 15 minutes. Typical conflict only takes 3 to 4 rounds to resolve. Use int plus power straight for the conflict to last longer, so not divided by 2. Note, in a high-level gaming environment, a successful gambling roll may be needed to be allowed to even participate. Cool. Determine the gambling stats of NPCs as follows, if you don't already know them. A low-level casual beginner, gambling 30, conflict pool 6. Mid-level regular, gambling 50, conflict pool 11. High-level, gambling 70, conflict pool 16. Now, this is cool because this is an entire scenario, and this is the only mechanical weight that you need to consider. You're basically saying, like, there's going to be a couple people around the table. They're going to get knocked out one by one as their conflict pool gets taken down when they don't win the hand, and here's their chances of success. So, you know, like, you could also represent, like, what would it mean to have somebody who had a high gambling skill but a low conflict pool? To me, that would be like they can get taken out by one big loss or a couple big losses. So that to me says they're really good, but they're a risk taker. Whereas if you have a low gambling skill but a high conflict pool, It could be like they're not very good, but they also don't put themselves in risky situations. So they last in the game longer. So you can kind of play with these things, right? Everyone places their bets, and then I guess they actually expect you to bet round by round. Use opposed rolls, high success and gambling skill winning the round. Winner deals 1d6 damage to every other participant. When they've reduced to 0, they're out of the game. The last person left wins. Either the winner takes it all or money is divided according to how many rounds each player won. Well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that at all. I would go by placement. Anyway. Playing an unknown game halves the gambling skill for the first 3 to 10 games, depending on the complexity of the game. So if you wanted to, you could track, like, how well do you know space craps, you know? How well do you know space poker? And then you have to actually, like, get reps in with the game before you can unhalve your gambling skill. That's funny. So yeah, there's an extended conflict. Kind of good. Kind of fun. Dinner party. Low level. Any social skill at 30%, charisma 6. Any social skill at 50, charisma 11. 70, 16. You can see there's a repeating pattern here. Yeah, 36, 50, 11, 70, 16. So the conflict pools are differences of 5. The skills are differences of 20. So that's like, you can kind of figure out how you want to play with that. But yeah, we're in social conflicts. What does it say happens when their pool is depleted? For every successful roll, there's a chance that something interesting and useful is revealed. This is cool. This is cool. Boating through a storm. They had to put the boating skill in here. Oh, look at that. These are kind of fun little guidance things, though, to figure out how to use these things. This is like the mini action grimoire of the game. Just to give you some inspiration and ideas. Like it. Again, I love that they're just like, here's some character art. It's just a dude. You know? Long journey on foot. Skills, athletics, endurance, survival. Conflict pools of constitution. Damage is 1d6. Round length is 24 hours. So these are like journeys in Legend of the Mist. This is cool. Optional. Tempo can be allowed to affect pool damage. So if you want to go 40 kilometers a day, you're going to take 1d8 per round if you fail. If you go at easy tempo, so you can like adjust. Like we pushed it in the beginning and then we got our butts kicked by the weather. So now we're going to slow down. The tricky thing with an exploration sci-fi is like, how do you make the time matter? If you know that you're looking for something specific, like we're going to go look for this thing that is going to help people heal from space sickness. That's fine and well, but here's your other problem. If you're able to like navigate to where you are going to land your spaceship, why are we doing walking journeys anyway? So this becomes more about like, we're stranded, our ship blew up, we need to walk back to like a landing place or an exfiltration point. So you have to kind of adapt this to the setting. In the Lambda station setting, you know, it's pretty much going to be you can land somewhat on site. But maybe there's some sort of like restriction, like you can't land within X amount of miles because it'll disturb the site, you know, with the radiation wash from the engine or something. Whatever, come up with something. I wonder how different this skill list is from the Mithras one. Looks like there's a lot of overlap. Yeah. They're almost identical. I checked on that as well. Social careers benefit from high charisma, int, and power. Their main skills are influence, deceit, insight, and oratory. So this is cool. So like a little mini character creation there. Another cool evocative piece of art. This is so funny though. Sometimes you can overthink sci-fi, and you know, you have movies that set these dramatic moments. Like the spaceship is like, look at this arc of their like trail, right? They're like whipping through this like canyon, kind of looks like, but you're like, why are you doing that and not just flying above it? But I guess, you could say, okay, well, this is a flight training. Like, you have to come up with reasons to justify it. Whereas, in Star Wars, it's like, why did they fly through the asteroid field? Why are the asteroids so close together? They're never that close together, by the way. Sorry to ruin it for you. I love this piece. Just because this feels like the scaffolding of, like, London Station being built. Like, as it was being constructed, And I don't know why there are, like, landmines everywhere. Because this is probably, in this image, this tells the story. This is kind of probably like a bandit place. Although I don't know why these are on chains. I guess so they don't drift apart of the thing. But they wouldn't all be facing up or the same direction. They'd be like facing off in every direction. Anyway. Could be a racing ship. That's a fair point. We could do pod racing in M-Space for sure. Here's combat. We care, but we also don't care. Basically, you're going to roll some stuff, you're going to deal some damage, and you're going to move on with your life. And that's A-okay with me. I do want to get to, what was it, page 74, which was the abbreviated combat? Simplified combat. Combat is downplayed in some settings and campaigns. Hello, it me. And the rules as written may feel too bulky at times. Below is a set of streamlined rules that are designed to make fights quicker and easier. Oh, that station art is awesome. Maybe those could be sensor buoys. Oh, yeah, cool. That station art is cool, though. Combat is also slightly less lethal in this version. One shot will not incapacitate a character quite as often, though special effects like drop foe or a lack of armor will still make many gunfights short and dangerous. As they feel comfortable with the simplified rules, you may want to switch to the regular rule set. No. I'm just being silly. Okay, hit points are comp size times divided by 2. Action points. Characters have 2 action points. Round length. Round length is the same, 5 seconds. Initiative. Average of dex and int, plus 1d10. Rolled at the start of each fight. Combat styles. Term of a weapon type. Combat actions. Okay. So, we have 2 actions. It's a 2-action economy. Attack, move, regain footing. Could be for any number of reasons. Sorry, I need to silence my phone. Sneak peek, assess situation without becoming a target. Evade, parry, take cover. That's actually a pretty short list. That's not bad. Alright, cool. Mook rules. Unimportant low-level PCs stop fighting after being hit once. If they can, they flee. Otherwise, they fall down, probably unconscious. Nice. A subset of 11 special effects are used in these simplified rules. Oh my god. Oh my god, these are the simplified rules? As you get used to them after a couple of fights, the speed of combat will increase. They do add a nice tactical element, so it's well worth the effort to learn them. Cheat sheets for players are recommended. Arise, get it from prone without losing an action point. But you have to do regain footing if you got tripped. I guess if you evade, because you go prone yourself. But it says use regain footing or arise to get up. Why would you use regain footing if you can use arise for free? Oh, you know what? These are probably tied to your successes or something like that. Because we didn't actually read how this game works. Anyway, let's assume that's the case. Blind opponent, critical only opposed. Disarm, drop foe, duck back, impale, maximize damage. That's cool. Pin down. Trip opponent, weapon malfunction, withdraw. Oh, okay, here's how wounds work in this simplified system. All damage you take above half hit points is a minor wound. When hit points are halved or lower, no attacks possible for 1d3 rounds. What? All skill checks are at a penalty of hard until the wound is no longer serious. Damn. Major wounds, 0 hit points or lower. Oh, characters dead or dying. If the character fails a roll against their endurance, they are killed instantaneously. Otherwise, they are incapacitated and require hospitalization before they die of shock or blood loss. Blown away. Negative hit points equal to starting hit points. Instant death from excessive trauma. Interesting. Interesting. Would love to see it in play, if I'm honest. Yeah, this is a simpler way to put the healing. Healing. Minor wounds. Regain hit points equal to a character's healing rate per day. Serious wounds. Regain hit points equal to a character's healing rate once per week until it reaches half the original value. From then on, it heals as a minor wound. I don't know if it means the original value of the damage of the serious wound, or they just mean when you're above half HP. I would just say once you're above half HP. First aid will restore a number of hit points equal to character's healing rate right away. Nice. Major wound, if not dead. If not dead, first aid will stabilize a dying character for a number of hours equal to their healing rate. Requires hospitalization or medicine skill to treat. Wow. Brutal. Spot rules. This chapter provides rules and guidance for a variety of different scenarios that games masters and players will encounter while playing M-Space. Fatigue. Okay. Asphyxiation. There's a fatigue table. Exposure to vacuum, blood loss, falling. Falling from a moving vehicle. Fire. Inanimate objects. This is for breaking stuff. Here's some more art for you. A critter. It's like a pointy goat elephant. Unicorn. Regarding troop play, I would argue you want players to make multiple characters for RPG games no matter what, if only because it takes so long to make a character when you die or put in a hospital. Fair point. Special effects are the juice of the combat engine. Okay. Which is funny. That's also a lot like... stunt points. Jeez, I could not think of it. Stunt points in Age system. So they're generated and then you use them to actually do stuff. Also like spending power in Legend in the Mist. Person for scale. Also, oh no, that is the full page width. Weird. Okay, starship design. Question for myself and maybe those watching. I might come back to this and do a second stream on it. Because I don't want to just like really zip through the starship design. I think that might be a fun thing to look at. We got starships, aliens, world building, circles, vehicle design, technology, and life forms. There's a lot left to talk about. And I don't really want to rush through it. And I know when I do these Discovery Core streams, I know my energy drops in the third hour, and I don't do as good of a job like reading and paying attention. So I think that might be what we do. I'll give you a little preview though. Starship design. Look at that. Costs per modules. Hold on, let me zoom in. You gotta like actually make money to like expand your ship. I think that's cool too. I think that would be really cool to work into like how ships are built if I were to do the Lambda Act game. That'd be really cool. You got add a sick bay. It actually has a healing like factor to it. So like when you're on the surface, you don't have to come back up to the station for healing. It's cool. Laboratory, there you go. There you go, Thaddeus. Get in the lab. One module per skill, plus 10%. So if you're doing the thing and you have the lab for the thing you're doing, you get a bonus 10%. I love that. Love that. You could have different, you could have different ships that are different specializations. Like this is our science exploration ship. This is our drop down and fight hostile enemies ship. Son of Oak needs to get on their Sci-Fi Mist system game. Yes, they do. I don't know if you were here, but I mentioned it earlier at the top of the stream where I was like, Legend in the Stars. Let's go. This is cool though. The thing about a Legend in the Stars is going to be like for your narrative sci-fi, and I'm all for that. this right here is the perfect example of what I want to see in a sci-fi game. You make some money. You invest 5,000 credits into a lab because your particular ship, this particular group, this particular, there's two best friends and they're scientists and they want to go in on a ship together. And so they hire somebody else to own a ship and whatever. And then they buy their own ship and then they make their own lab and then they start running their own science explorations down on the ground. And like, that's cool to me. And the fact that like adding a lab instead of adding something else makes a mechanical difference to the types of things they can do. I think that's awesome. And maybe you don't take that ship on every mission. Rather than saying, this is the thing. This is the thing I've been trying to get at. Rather than, let me do it like this. Come over here. Zoop. I need to get a stream deck someday. Rather than specializing into things and then going down to the ground and then finding like, well, my niche specialties didn't come up again. That sucks. Rather than that, it becomes a matter of like, how much intel do you have about where you're going? And then bring the people who are already good at it. So they are always playing in situations where their actual niches matter. Not always, but very cool. Very cool. Hangar bay, hyperspace drive. Yeah, there are certain things that like I would just take a marker to and cross out for Lambda Act because there ain't no hyperspace on regular vehicles. Not in my setting. The lab ship is not great for commuting, no leather seats. Yeah, I wonder, is there like a modifier for just like comfort? This is neat though too. You're supposed to have open space, one module per person. The more is preferable. In case you bring an alien back home with you or something, or go rescue somebody, right? But maybe there's like a penalty for like being cramped or something like that. Self-repair modules. Escape pods, tractor beams, extra sensors, robot arm. You gotta love this stuff. What does this mean, app? Where was that? Add the number of modules together to get ship size. Streamlined, right? Yes, here if the ship is designed for atmospheric flight, all of ours would be. Size stat is not altered, but length and width will be greater to make room for wings and a slimmer hull. Non-streamlined ships suffer a difficulty grade of formidable to pilot roles in atmospheric flight. Why would you not choose it? There's no downside. Interesting. I guess just because certain things just aren't. Example, military ship sizes, civilian ship sizes. I kind of feel like we should do like what we did with Blue Rose and come back and do a base camp on this and maybe like generate a character, make a spaceship, and then take a deeper look. But yeah, I like this game. I also like how the size rating is going up by factors of 2. So it's like you could almost encode this into 8-bit. I don't know why you would, but you could. Weapon systems. Yeah, I do think there's like as I'm developing this setting and the lore of London Station at large, like we need to get some factions built in there. Which, by the way, you can all help with. If you're in the London Station Discord and you're not familiar with Mission Control is a little side perk of being a member of the Patreon and the Discord. You earn these little currencies called metadiscs, and you can spend metadiscs to make things true in the world. They do go through a review process. I have final veto on any weird Bodie McBoatface stuff, but you could create factions, you could create ships themselves, not like creating a mechanical ship, but like this is the Harbinger, and it's like this ship is owned by this character. You can create characters that exist as NPCs or significant people in the world, and I will work with you towards that. I know people are accumulating metadiscs like crazy, and I just haven't really been promoting how you can use them. But if you wanted to say, I was just watching a clip the other day of something from Disney's Atlantis, right? And you have like, again, scientific expedition group, but you also have like the muscle and the tough guys, and they have a different agenda. And it's like maybe there are factions on London Station who are interested in like just resource gathering for resource gathering's sake, then you get into the Avatar kind of situation, blue people Avatar, not airbending Avatar. And you have that conflict with discovery versus production, so on and so forth, enrichment, right? So coming up with different factions could be really cool for that. Anyway, wide open field for creating stuff in Mission Control. I'm going to stay on this screen a bit and just zip through. Time to establish a conclave of scientists. Let's do it. Just see what else. Oh, here's where it says apps. Apps are programs that can be installed in a starship to aid its crew. The most common apps are targeting sensors and astrogation. Each of them are targeted at a specific skill and will give the user a bonus in certain situations. That's cool. One thing that's not really captured in MSpace that I might have to add, or maybe it just translates directly over, is there isn't like a whole bunch of like cyberspace type stuff, which we do have a significant cyberspace element to London Station. It's like there are multiple zones of exploration, right? Like there's 3 main zones for the world setting and like if it were to be a game that we played in. And it's the stuff happening on the station itself, the people dynamics, the politics, the this, the that, whatever, the station. There's like the stuff that happens on the surface, Discovery Core, and then there's what happens in the cyberspace or London Station Simulator. You see how it's all coming together now? You see, there's 3 spheres of this channel. There's 3 spheres of play in this hypothetical game. Anyway, you can create stuff in any of that. And actually, when Zach made this, I still have this hotkeyed. And Zach made this art and was like, "Oh, you're like a fox spirit trapping us in these streams before you release us back to our day." It like started this whole like train of thought where I was like, maybe there is a fox spirit roaming around in the cybersphere of London Station that like randomly like takes people from their login sessions and like drops them somewhere else and just like asks them weird questions and then like lets them go. And it's this like thing that people are like, that's real. That's not real. That's an urban legend. And people are like, no, I got picked up by the fox spirit. And then I went down this whole train of thought of like, what if like they called AIs or whatever that attained what appears to be intelligence, but there's debate about that, and they just start to call them spirits because they're like spirits in the machine that like have their own agendas and nobody even really knows what's going on. Just take the cyberspace stuff from Otherscape. It does cyberspace the best. IMO. Nice. Okay, awesome. I will have to look into that. Originally, I was inspired by the cybersphere in Astroprisma, but that's like an abandoned cyber wasteland kind of a thing. That's cool. I didn't realize because I do have that PDF. So someday I will look into it. But yeah, I think we'll do another stream on MSpace and do like just like we did with Blue Rose and do a little bit of like playing around with actual generation and then theorizing. I will flip. Will I? No, I won't. We'll talk about ships then. This is what I was going to show you guys. So this is like how the modules are set up. So this is called the Nighthawk, and these little modules. This is very much like Astroprisma had like actual little modules that you're supposed to like plug in, and they mean different things. So like this is a mess hall. These are crew quarters. This is a hallway. And the modules have different sizes. So you plot the modules out, and then you draw the ship around it. Isn't that cool? The answer is yes, it's cool. I think there's another ship example here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. The Kierkegaard. Having a base ship you build on is always fun. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Dicey. You say, I need to check out Otherscape. The fantasy parts of it just aren't to my taste. That's the ironic part, is that the fantasy parts are the only parts that appeal to me because I'm so not versed in cyberpunk. So I'm like, that's what actually makes me interested in it. In the same way that like the mythic parts of City of Mist is the only parts I'm interested in. The noir crime-solving mystery stuff, I'm like, I guess if it has to be there, we can deal with it. But yeah, that's cool. Engineering bay in the middle. It's cool. It's cool and it's gridded and it can be built in Minecraft. Next thing we'll be building like London Station spaceships in my Minecraft world next to our Temple of Shellin from Pathfinder. What a cool world that'll be. It's just an amalgamation of all this RPG stuff. Okay, I keep talking about ending stream, so I'm going to actually do it. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Thaddeus, for the monster tip. I really appreciate the support. appreciate all the support of any of you being here at any point in time, because, oh wow, I really cut you guys off on a beautiful piece of art. Too bad. Come back next time. I'm kind of mean, sorry. I think MSpace is really cool. I think that it would probably be fun and fine to run more or less as is, just like trimming things here and there without rebuilding the whole skill list and doing all that stuff. And I'm interested in trying that sometime. So I don't know. Maybe I'll take a look at that free intro adventure that was mentioned in the book and see about someday, one of these days, where I have a random chunk of time off. See if anybody wants to run like or be a play-in. Or if somebody else wants to run it, then I can play it. I'm cool with that too. Daddies, if you want to run it. But I think that would be fun to do as a community. So again, if you're watching this on the VOD and you're not a member of the London Station Patreon or Discord, all the stuff is in the bottom left corner of your screen. Also, I guess I could throw it in the chat. Why the heck not? Patreon. You can also gift Patreon memberships these days. So down to run it? Sweet. You're going to be better at it than me. So with that said, thank you all for being here so much. Let's see. I know Zach was streaming earlier. Some of y'all know that we've got our buddies over in the Twitch sphere, Twitchiverse. And we try and support them when we want. So if you'd be so kind as to come along with me. You know what? I've got 2 friends streaming right now, actually. I will say... Zach's doing RPGs. Zach's doing... You'll be maybe okay. You'll do great. If you do it. And if I do it, I'll be great. How about that? So let's get a raid message here. And remember, they don't expect you to stick around, but it's nice to pop in and say hi to our buddies. So, you can copy that message, and if you want to come over to the link I gave you there for Zach's stream. Zach is a member of our community. And right now, they are streaming world building and doing all sorts of cool stuff. So, I'm going to head over there, get on with the rest of my day, decide if I want to go in and help work tonight or not. They offered me hours, and I'm like, I kind of liked the idea of not working all weekend. But with that said, thank you all. Love you so much, and we'll see you next time on London Station. Have a good one.